Hello world, my name is Tim Roswick and welcome to another daily game dev video. Today we're talking about what makes a great game. Now I want to start this video off by saying I'm a dude on the internet who makes games, and I am not the end-all be-all ultimate intelligence on game design. I'm a dude that has an opinion, and I would like to state that because YouTube comments like to say things like, how are you qualified? You haven't made $1 million in game dev, Tim. Bah. And I'm not going to apologize in the beginning of the video. I just want to state that out so everybody knows where we're coming from. That being said, here's my opinion. I think a great game in a vacuum does not exist. It's not real. And what I mean in a vacuum is without people, right? The reason you need people is because a great game is only a matter of compatibility, in my opinion. And here's what I mean by this. So with Philophobia, which was my first commercial game. You can find it on Steam. Philophobia with PH. Link down below. The game was... I spent so much time, man. I spent so much time trying to make a great game. And I was obsessed. Like, what if people hate it? Like, what? I want to make something that they love. Like, how do I do this? Like, and I was just obsessed with this idea of a great game, right? And I saw all these flaws with it, and I saw these problems with it, and I saw... like, oh, this person like doesn't like this thing, and oh, I feel like this is a design flaw, and there's so much shit in my head. And then I released it, and I read the reviews, and people called out my greatest fear. They said this, this thing that you put in the game was a design flaw. I had discussions with people. I talked to Josh Beiser from Game Wisdom, which I highly recommend his channel, by the way, about Philophobia, and he said the same thing. Like the shadow mechanic just didn't really fit the precision platforming nature of the game. And I agree. Like, I knew that going in. I figured that was a design flaw. And there are people that definitely iterated that to me, right? They said the same thing I thought, and I knew about it. But what I wasn't prepared for was the people that said the opposite. They said, Tim, I love the shadow mechanic. I love the shadow mechanic because I don't know what's behind the shadow, and it constantly keeps me on my toes. It constantly makes me watch my surroundings and really pay attention. It constantly blocks stuff out of my vision. And speedrunners have told me they really like the shadow mechanic because it forces them to memorize every piece of the level, and they enjoyed that. It's not like other games where they, they can see most of the level or whatever. There's a map or whatever deal. Like, you can only see what you have line of sight to in Philophobia, and they really like that. And it confused me because I was like, wait a second. This person, this is a design flaw in my view, and this person agrees that it's a design flaw, but this person thinks it's a fantastic feature of the game. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Same thing happened with like the execution level of the game. Some people were like, Tim, this game is way too hard. It requires way too much precision. The controls are way too tight. Like, what are you doing? There's like no room for mess ups. This game sucks. And then some people were like, Tim, this requires so much precision. The controls are so tight. This game is amazing. Same shit, but like two different outcomes, right? So, great game. And I'm not saying Philophobia is a great game. I actually think the opposite. I think as a creators, at least me, I think down of my games. I always think I could do better. But it made me realize that I thought of a great game as a thing, as an attainable goal. But really it was a compatibility overlap. It was a Venn diagram. This was my game and all the features and all the things. And maybe this right here was the people that love it, right? Or maybe they're in here, right? And the people that kind of like it, people that hate it, right? And it's just a Venn diagram overlap. And I realized there are three core things that make a great game, and maybe that would be better to start the video with three great things that make a great game. They come down to a couple things, and this is not just from the Philophobia realization and going into launch, but this is from my analysis of a bunch of different games and the games I like and all that stuff. Three things. Number one is theme compatibility. So Philophobia is a game where love is literal hell. All of the enemies are hearts. It's got suicide. It's got darkness. It's got literal demons that are trying to torture you with love because love is evil. It's a dark fucking game, okay? It's weird and it's really dark. And yeah, it's got like a cute art style, but it's fucking dark. It's like demonic and shit. And it's got like upside down crosses in the shape of... Like, it's fucking dark, okay? I had people message me like, Tim, are you okay? I just saw Philophobia and I'm a little concerned for you. Like, do you feel like love is really hell? Are you okay? And, you know, thank you. Thank you for reaching out to me. I'm fine. Appreciate it. Some people do not resonate with that at all. Some people do not. Then there are people that have been through really rough breakups. They've been at the end of their rope. Maybe they've been suicidal, right? Some of them have. Some of them messaged me. And they told me their story. And they said they resonated with the game on another level. They've never resonated with another game like this, right? And that's... Philophobia is a deep, dark, emotional passion project, right? So maybe it's not the greatest example of thematic capability. I think a lighter-hearted example, kids, let's talk about some fun stuff. Do you like space or do you not? Do you like sci-fi games? Yes or no, right? Civilization, I remember reading a lot of negative press around Civilization Beyond Earth because a lot of history people really like Civilization. They like Civilization games. And then Civilization goes and says, here's the same game, but on an alien planet. Space people loved it. The people that love space loved it. But the people that didn't like space, they're like, we want history. We want history stuff. So there's thematic compatibility is one. Like, is the theme compatible, right? Do you like mechs? Do you like starships? You know, are there starships in the game? Yes or no? So there's that. Then there's mechanical compatibility. And mechanical, I would partner up with the execution level too. So like when I say execution, I mean how much physical dexterity does the game require? So Philophobia, for example, is a very mechanically simple but very high dexterity game. It requires execution. The entire game is execution. You know where to go. You know, like the end of the level, boom, it's an exit. You just got to get there. The whole game is having the skill, the thumb skill to get there. So mechanical compatibility, some people like certain mechanics, some people don't. Like if you have a genre of choice, you might like tactics games. I personally really into tactics games. That's why I'm making one. Battleborn Tactics. Shout out. #marketing. Just kidding. So like some people, they're really into that genre and they have high mechanical compatibility. So games in that genre are almost an auto buy from them because they have that high mechanical compatibility. If that game is the same theme that they also love, it's 100% buy. If you make a game in their genre, in their theme, boom, you got their sale. If you make a game in their genre, maybe it's not in their theme, you might still have their sale because of that mechanical compatibility, right? Like it's got the mechanics that they like. And sometimes you can create new mechanics and stuff and interest people from a lot of different genres. It's just harder to find those people when you've created something somewhat new, right? Like if you're sticking to a genre, it's easier to find fans of that genre than if you're creating a newer mechanic. It's hard to kind of find who will like it and who won't. And number 3, the last part of what makes a great game, in my opinion, is general usability, right? So Stellaris is a great example of this because it's the game I started recently. I love sci-fi. Stellaris is a game about building a galactic empire. I love simulation type of games and games where you build stuff and explore and stuff like that. Stellaris is about building a galactic empire. It fits mechanically and it fits thematically for me. It's all about it. Stellaris intimidated the shit out of me to play because when I look at screenshots of that game, I'm like, holy shit, the menus are insane. There's like 10 million menus. So for years, I did not play the game. Finally, I decided to watch 90 fucking minutes of YouTube tutorials, and I talked about this previously, but like, holy shit, man. Finally got into Stellaris. I love it. It's fantastic. But had it had more usability stuff, had it been easier to understand and learn, I might have got into it earlier. Matter of fact, I might have bought it because the only reason I really played it because it was on Game Pass. Like I don't I don't think I would have bought it based on how it looked, because it just looked too intimidating. But because I have Game Pass and it was on there, I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. So like it reduced the barrier of entry. So general usability is super, super interesting, because even if someone is thematically interested in your game and they're mechanically interested in your game, the game is really hard to understand, or it's not super clear. It can be a barrier. Now, some people, if they're 100% thematically interested in your game, 100% mechanically interested in your game, they will push past some of those learning curves, because they like the game, right? And I would take all three of these as like sort of a spectrum. Like I wouldn't say, oh, you need 100% of each, but you can have like 50 or 75% of each, right? And then you can like take the average of all of them, right? If you've got decent theme compatibility, if you got decent mechanical compatibility, and you got decent usability, I think you got a great game. But remember, the only way to figure out those numbers is by comparing them to an audience, right? That's where target audience comes from, because those are the people that are going to overlap your theme and overlap your mechanic and have the patience for your usability, right? Or hopefully it's not that high patience required. Hopefully you get good usability, so it's generally lower barrier to entry. But yeah, a great game in a vacuum doesn't exist. You need the people, because you need the people to determine those factors, right? You need, in order to understand whether your game has theme compatibility, you got to know who it's going to have theme compatibility with. That's why genre generally is easier to market for, because like you're saying, okay, I made a space simulation game. You go after the people who are into space simulation games. It's a lot easier that way, right? Than figuring out whatever the hell, some random stuff you're making. It's a lot better to do that. So that's it. That's the Tim Ruswick theory on how to make a great game. Tim Ruswick's never made $1 million in game dev. Tim Ruswick has one commercial game, so take this as it is. But I thought I would state that because the more games I make, I made a couple dozen games at this point, and like I start to focus on this stuff. I just start to focus on like, it's not about a thing. Great game is not a thing. It's about the compatibility with the people. And so like one last example with like Cyberpunk is that game got really, really complex. Cyberpunk is my stealth hacking roguelike, and it's turn-based, grid-based, permadeath, all that stuff. And I would show it to people and I would get different feedback. And some people would be like, this game is too confusing. I don't understand what's going on. And then some people would be like, this game is amazing. I love this game. How do you do this? How do you do this? And they would ask me all these questions. And I started, the people that were interested, I started asking like, hey, what kind of games do you usually play? You usually play roguelikes? You usually play strategy games? Like, and I realized that the people that were really into my game were usually really into cerebral type of heavier traditional roguelikes and games that required high learning. And I realized this game kind of fit that bill. So you can kind of do it backwards too. Like you don't have to design a game for an audience, but you can kind of find an audience for your game. And that's kind of what I did for Cyberpunk, because I built this thing and I just started to find people who were interested in it and then narrow down my target audience that way. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. I want to say thank you to these lovely people right here for being a part of Game Dev Underground Elite. If you want your name on this list, you can head over to patreon.com/GameDevUnderground. Lots of stuff there to help you build, finish, and launch better games. But leave me your thoughts down below. Let me know. Show me your comments. I will read them maybe in a future video. We'll see. Also, head on over to Discord and for the daily discussion, and we'll talk about this. My name is Tim Ruswick, and I will talk to you again next week.